Hi, Daddies. This is Vika. The conversation you're about to hear is from a live event that Not Your Daddy's Films hosted in March in collaboration with Antigravity Academy. This event and conversation is specifically focused on the development process. Antigravity Academy is a creative home for singular storytellers with a unique emphasis on emerging talent. They develop and produce stories that haven't been told before in film, TV, documentary, short form, and beyond. If you want to learn more about them and how you can get involved, their website is linked in the show notes.
I'm your daddy.
I can be smart when it's important.
I'm your daddy. I'm
sorry to this
I'm your daddy.
Welcome to Daddy Dailies, a podcast hosted by Not Your Daddy's Films. On a film set, dailies are sent out after a shoot day so you can see the work in progress. Daddy Dailies are conversations that go behind the scenes so you can see what work went into the process and be better armed to succeed in the industry. Daddy Dailies, hosted by Not Your Daddy's Films.
Well, I'm Catherine Hughes. I'm one of the founders of Not Your Daddy's Films. I'm a writer, director, and I'm currently in pre-production for my first feature this fall, which is really exciting. Thank you. So I'm really excited to learn and have a conversation with such a talented and well-versed group of women. So I'm going to introduce our panelists with their bios. So Valerie Bush. Let's all give a round of applause for Valerie Bush. Valerie Bush is a film producer and head of production at Antigravity Academy, the production company founded by Academy Award nominee Carlos Lopez Estrada. Most recently, she produced Didi, written and directed by Academy Award nominee Sean Wang, which premiered at the 2024 Sundance Film Festival, winning both the Audience Award and Special Jury Award for Best Cast Ensemble. The film was acquired by Focus Features and released theatrically in July. Additionally, Didi won Best Feature at the Film Independent Spirit Awards. Valerie served as the line producer on Fremont, which debuted at Sundance 2023, and won the John Cassavetes Award at the 2024 Independent Spirit Awards. Amazing. She is currently set to produce Dead, the next feature from Academy Award nominee Carlos Lopez Estrada, alongside Anti-Gravity and Red Rum. Valerie was also the lead producer of For Mexico, For All Time, a 6-chapter film broadcast live at the Las Vegas Sphere during Riyadh seasons.
They're just a sponsor, you don't have to worry
about it. Okay. Seasons Noche UFC, a groundbreaking event in honor of Mexican Independence Day. Valerie produces Anti-Gravity Academy's Screenwriter Camp, which focuses on developing feature films for first-time filmmakers, and is set to produce the feature films that emerge from the program. She also produces the company's short film program in partnership with Dolby Institute. One more round of applause for Valerie. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
Next is Holly Stanton. Holly Stanton is a producer and executive specializing in boundary-pushing narrative documentary and fine arts projects. Prior to joining Anti-Gravity Academy as head of development, Holly was a film and TV agent at CAA, where she packaged and sold documentaries and represented nonfiction filmmakers and production companies. She previously led creative operations at Participant Media, working across documentary and narrative departments and consulting on art-related films and projects. Before her work in the film industry, Holly spent many years in contemporary art museums and galleries, working with artists to mount exhibitions worldwide and open up pop-up galleries and food concepts in unlikely spaces. She's devoted her career to uplifting emerging filmmakers and artists and supporting novel forms of storytelling. Christina Chou. Christina is an agent at leading entertainment and sports agency, Creative Arts Agency, CAA, in the motion picture literary department. She works in the Los Angeles office and represents such writers, directors, and actors as Issa Rae, Wong Kar-wai, Kathy Yan, Lee Isaac Chung, Lulu Wang, Stephanie Hsu, among so many others. Christina also works actively across the agency to support clients in the global marketplace. Christina began her career at the Economic and Trade Policy Office at the Embassy of Canada. Then she worked at boutique talent management company Plan C Group before joining CAA in 2011. Chou graduated from University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign with a dual BA degree in economics and political science. Last but not least, Rayka Zehtabchi, first Iranian woman to win an Oscar. Yes. Rayka is a director and producer working in both documentary and fiction. Her passions lie in telling human stories that shed light on little-known social causes and communities. Rayka's Oscar-winning Netflix short period, End of Sentence, is about a group of village women in northern India who start a sanitary pad-making business in an effort to improve feminine hygiene and destigmatize menstruation. In the advertising space, Rayka is repped as a director at Pretty Bird, which has been repeatedly recognized by Ad Age as one of the top commercial production companies in the world. Outside her branded work, Rayka's short films, Just Hold On, Are You Still There, and Long Line of Ladies, have all received Vimeo staff picks and have screened and won jury awards at festivals at Sundance, South by Southwest, and AFI Fest. In 2024, Rayka directed her first episode of television on the long-standing Netflix documentary series Chef's Table. Most recently, Rayka joined the Academy as a voting member, as well as the Directors Guild of America. Her focus is now on her first narrative feature, which she's set to develop with Antigravity in 2025. As a versatile storyteller, Rayka continues to work in documentary and fiction, pushing the boundaries of each form with every project she helms. Thank you so much for being here. Amazing. So I guess I'd love to just first kind of go down the line and talk about a little bit of your role in the development process, kind of when you come on board, and then how do you get the project in the hands of your future collaborators? So Valerie, we can start with you.
My role will vary in the development process. A lot of the times, like, I guess I can talk about Didi specifically. I came on about maybe a year or so after Carlos and Sean started the process with Didi. And for me, a big part of my process is helping with the packaging and helping with financing at the baby steps, like the first moments. And then as we go along, a lot of my involvement with Didi was about production specifically. So they needed me to put together the team and things like that. So working very closely with the director, which Sean's awesome. So I was fortunate enough to have an awesome director on that one. And yeah, a lot of the times in development, we'll also start to attach cast members.
Yep.
So working through that process as well. But yeah, it varies project to project. For me specifically, because my type of producing is focused on production. So it'll vary. Yeah.
Holly, how about you?
Yeah, I mean, again, kind of varies project to project. Every project is different, but sometimes I'll get something that's at idea stage. It could just be a seedling of something. Sometimes it starts as an article. It starts as a book. It'll be a script. It can come across our desk in so many different forms, but really, depending on where it's starting, my role is really helping to nurture the idea, help shape the project with the filmmaker or the writer or writer-director, and help, get it to the point where then it could go into Valerie's hands. So there's an area kind of between what I do and what Valerie does, at Antigravity, where, we are kind of in the loop creatively with what the other person is doing. And, the overlap is really where I help to get it to the stage where it can then go, So that's sort of how our process works.
Yeah, I'm pretty similar as well. I think most people think agents usually don't see something that early, but more often than not, we are actually, in a lot of our meetings, we're hearing IP, we're hearing books, and we are the ones sort of matchmaking and making sure our clients or various people are like, hey, did you read that article about the $25 gift certificate scam thing that's happening? Some people might know. So there's a little bit of that. I think Holly said it best, the seed, right? Or pre-seed, whatever that we want to call it. And then I find as an agent, it does vary with every client. There's some people that are like, hey, I'd love you to read the first draft, be kind to me. And then sometimes it's draft 10 after a great producer or a great collaborator has really come in and really juiced it up to a point where should we go out to cast? Should we bring on another producer? Where do you think we are at in terms of the marketplace? So it's kind of the bookend of the development process.
I hate to sound like a parrot, but it varies from project to project.
Yeah,
even as a filmmaker, I mean, I work in both docs and in fiction, and even in the advertising space. I mean, it really, it always just, I think, starts from the seed of the idea that you have, and that could be articles, or sometimes I've even chased a story and hit people up on Facebook and said, "Hi, are you interested in me making a documentary about this experience that you had or whatever it is?" And then in narrative as well, I personally approach my narrative projects from the POV of a doc filmmaker, where I'm very interested in kind of like getting into the world that I'm about to step into and write, and understanding kind of like what is the reality of this world, whether that means like interviewing people that come from that world or that experience, and just kind of staying very close to it and very true to it. So yeah, it varies from project to project.
Valerie, I'd love to start kind of with you with individual questions. As a producer, what are you, when you're looking at projects, what are you looking to find in a package to make it attractive? And every project is different, but is there an element that you find like continuously moves the needle when people come to you with things?
Is that like your question about my own personal preference, or is it about like what I think will sell?
Maybe both.
Okay.
Like, yeah. Yeah.
Well, I think that like for me personally, and also with Antigravity, like it's important for us to find storytellers that are telling the stories that feel true to them. I think especially with first-time directors, that is a selling point for financiers, because if you have a story that only you can tell, then like it's easier to get them to trust you to be able to tell that story, because no one else would know it better than yourself. Speaking like for the director. So on the financing side, like that's also something that's really important to me. Another thing that is like important to me personally when I'm reading a script is I want it to be able to have the heart and emotion that I need to be able to feel it, but it also needs to be entertaining.
For sure.
I'm pretty allergic to like independent film that is super boring. Like like, let's be honest, like there's a lot out there that are like artsy for the sake of being artsy,
For sure.
opposed to just being emotionally driven and like actually trying to move people in an emotional way, and also like be fun to watch. So like for me personally, that's something that I look for on both sides.
Yeah, even just hearing you talk about how Antigravity is caring about first-time filmmakers and, having a story to tell, I'm like, oh, you're right. Like that is very sadly specific to you guys. I feel like, first-time filmmakers aren't often supported. It's really hard to get your first thing. So that's really nice to hear. Holly, as a development executive, how do you source scripts at Antigravity, and how a follow up to that? Kind of how do you think proof of concept shorts help in addition to a spec script, if at all? I know you guys are very supportive of short films, so.
Yeah, I mean, things come to us in so many different ways. I think a lot of this business is tracking. A lot of it is looking at the various labs and watching a lot of shorts and just reading as much as possible, really trying to get a sense of everyone's point of view. And certain things stick with you, and then you might have lists, but a lot of things come from reps that you develop relationships with. Like Christina, has impeccable taste, and I love, anything that she would want me to read, I would read very quickly. But yeah, I think so much of it comes from, filmmakers and writers. I think you have to really be always reading, always looking, and be, for Antigravity, we have programs that are really dedicated towards first-time filmmakers. We have a screenwriters camp, we have, a short film lab, and we see so much through that process. So I think a lot of it is, personally just earmarking, different things that I'm reading, people that I'm meeting, things that I'm seeing, and sometimes I'm chasing, but a lot of times, things will just emerge organically.
And do you guys find that you're looking at short film sites and festivals and all of those different places that people are, putting their work?
I just hit up a TikTok filmmaker, the one I sent you the other day. He's incredible, and I love his work. And actually, Barry Jenkins found, I'm blanking on her name.
Ava Victor.
Thank you. Her film just premiered at Sundance, and that's how they made that connection, was on TikTok. She was like a YouTube TikTok filmmaker, and when I heard that story, I was like, oh, I'm a huge fan of like this guy on TikTok. Like I'm gonna hit him up, and we had an incredible meeting. So I think that definitely.
So just a reminder that people are looking.
People are looking, and like shorts. I mean, I think shorts are so important. Make your short however you can. But I think, I mean, I'm always watching, the collections of shorts at, from the various festivals, looking at Vimeo, looking, just however things organically find me on the internet. But I'm also watching a lot of documentaries. I think there's so much crossover, and there's no reason for these different genres to be considered distinct, in perpetuity. I think we should really be thinking about collapsing that space between, short film and narrative film and documentary, because there's so much of a conversation happening among these media. So I think to your question that I had forgotten previously about proof of concept, I think, it can be very helpful. I think having a proof of concept short that is directly linked to a script that you're trying to take out and you're trying to get people to read is almost less important than having a director's sample that speaks to who you are and what your vision is and how that relates to the project that you're trying to take out and speak to.
I totally agree. I think that, like, if you have, like, a feature script that you're, like, wanting to get made one day, and you're like, okay, well, now I need to make some short films. It doesn't hurt for it to be, like, in the same, like, tonal world. Totally. But, like, I totally agree. Like, just a standalone short film, I think it's going to be stronger for most people.
Right. Okay. And Christina, how often do you pair filmmakers with actors to move the needle, if at all? And, like, what does that process look like for you?
Yeah. I'm glad you asked it, because I think a lot of people are like, we want to put our stuff out there. How do we actually find the right collaborator to get it to financing and all those things like that? And often pairing somebody with an actor, pairing your project with an actor can open up a lot of those vehicles. I think a couple things I'll just say is that having the script to a place where it's authentic to you, but is like, beat it up. Like, go to your collaborators, the people that you trust, your reps, people in your life, and be like, spell check, rip it apart, make sure it's there, right? I would explore always approaching your first approach with an actor to be like, this is going to be your first impression of me as a creative, right? So just making sure that's all up to speed. And I think also I've seen the power of a personal letter. I have a client who was really struck by this project that I was like, it could be great, but let's look at some other things too. And she was like, he hand wrote this letter. And she's like, who hand writes? And it's a beautiful letter as well. You don't have to handwrite your letters, but putting thought into, why did I approach you? Like, nobody wants to be approached because they're, I'm going to use this sad word, bankable, right? Or financeable. They are artists too. They are people. And they want to know that you've seen their work, that, you've seen their most recent work, and maybe something really obscure. Use that moment to really flex who you are, and hopefully create a actual connection. And I think the other thing is that I've had occasions where clients will connect with an actor, things won't work out, whether creative or schedule, and they find something else to do just because that initial letter, that initial meeting was so great. Yeah.
That's great advice. Thank you. Rayka, would you tell us about the process of finding producers and support for Period End of Sentence? Like, what were some of the early elements that you had on board?
That was a very unconventional process and something that I haven't repeated to this day, because I was sort of like, I came on board the project, but the project at the time was in the hands of high school students at a private school in Los Angeles, and an English teacher. And really they just had this, like, they knew about the issue that existed, and they just wanted to do something about it. And a lot of these girls came from, like, entertainment families and, parents who are producers. So they're like, documentary, like, we have storytelling. We have to turn to storytelling. And so when I came on board the project, I just graduated film school, and I remember my very first meeting with them was I entered, like, a classroom, an English classroom in a high school. And those were, like, the producers that I was going to be working with. And so it really was, like, a very homegrown grassroots effort, which I will say, like, eventually gained momentum over time. And then we got the support from the parents and the larger, film community that helped us after the film got made, to campaign and push for the Oscars and whatnot. But the process of making the film really It was very close, and it was very much a game of like, we have no idea what we're doing next. We're going to follow our gut and hopefully, reach out to mentors and gain advice from the people in the community if we can to figure out what to do next.
Yeah, I feel like that's such great advice. That's something I personally like, reaching out to people in your network and mentors. I think women generally are afraid to ask for help, more so than men. And I think just a reminder at Not Your Daddies that we love to tell women and non-binary people is that like, reach out to your mentors, reach out to the people in your life. Like, they are likely willing to help you in big ways. So that's really special that you got to do that.
Can I add something to that? Because I love that comment. I think I was always afraid to do that, and I think this is like a common experience, especially if you're just starting out. But you really have to have the nerve, be classy about it, but don't spam people. But one thing too, as a director, is that your work is really as good as the community and the collaborators that you have around you. So if you want to see yourself over there, start reaching for that. And that means start reaching out to those people and like always be a student, gain advice from those people. Don't reach out to them because you want something from them, but reach out as a student. I continue to do that to this day. And I know that, even down the line in my career, I'm going to continue to do that for other people who are just starting out. It's a cycle.
That's awesome. Thank you. A question for all of you. Do you think it's helpful or hindering for writers and directors to be paying attention to the trends and the mandates and what's popular? I feel like there's always some kind of mandate going around. So what is your opinion on that?
I think it's really helpful to be mindful of them without letting them control your process. Like, I think we've all seen films out there that have felt like they were written by ChatGPT or Claude or something. It's like, I think there is a desire out there or like a feeling that you need to engineer a project for the algorithm, but like, you really shouldn't do that. You should be mindful of what they are. You should be mindful of the trends. It's like in documentary, it's like the 3 C's, like true crime, cult, con, it's like that will sell, but like, what's your take on that? If you're thinking about like trying to create something in that space because you feel like it's going to work, don't do it just because you think it's going to work. Like, what is the story? What makes it unique? Like, what is your take on that? So I think that's in general, it's like, so much of this business is self-education around like, just through watching what you're seeing out there, what's picking up steam, what the thing is, reading all the trades. But so much of it is about what you're really trying to say. And so I wouldn't compromise your vision. I would just be mindful of what they are.
That's so well said. I wanted to add on to that because I feel like it's so hard to create in a vacuum. Like, I think this is a perfect example of like, you're in community, we're asking questions, we're helping each other. Like, be unafraid to look at great movies, to read another person's script. I think often, I've encountered individuals that have been like, well, I don't want it to sully this pure thought or my pure script. And it's a noble idea, but it's not how it works. Like, everything, all art that we create has been influenced by other things that we've touched. And what's wonderful is that it's coming through your filter. So like, be a student. I loved what you said, right? Engage, be out there, ask questions, consume. The one thing I would say is I love it when I have people in my life that are like, hey, we want to write a genre script, right? Can you tell us some things that we should be avoiding? And there are specific mediums like genre or genre specifically where I'm like, you should probably, I've read 8 scripts about this, so perhaps not. Perhaps because we're at seed phase, let me just tell you if I've read 8 scripts, that means everybody's read 8 scripts of this.
If not more.
And it's usually like
a pill to make you younger.
An injection. Somebody
This
coming
will
out of your
expand your
back.
brain.
Because I imagine people will jump on things too, and yeah, so maybe we avoid doing that. Okay.
I love that comment too about the genre. People contacting you about genre films. When I made Period and a Sentence, I'd watched like 2 documentaries in my life, And I remember being like, I don't really want to watch other documentaries. I just want to kind of approach this, through my own lens. And it's not like I didn't like borrow or pull, inspiration from like other projects. But to this day, when I make documentaries, I approach them through a narrative filmmaking lens, meaning like I'm pulling inspiration from like other things. And I think, I just think you have to make what you want to make at the end of the day. You can't pigeonhole yourself into like a system that's already going.
Right. Dope. Thank you. Valerie, can you, for our community, I feel like, the word producer, there's so many different kinds of producers. Can you just walk us through a little bit of like understanding the different types on set? I've been on sets where they're like, I'm a creative producer, and then there's people that are EPs, and then there's associates. It's like, what's a producer,
I can speak on it from the lens of independent film.
Sure.
On the studio side, the titles might be slightly different, but you're right, there's a lot of them and it is confusing. I actually despise the word creative producer. All producers are creative. It's part of the job. So whenever anyone says that, I'm like, oh, do you know what you're doing? But yeah, I mean, the producer title, like just producer, that's someone that's on the project from the start to the end. And it's like, that's their baby. Like they're going to be working on it nonstop. And normally it's a team of like 2 or 3 or 4, depending on the size of the film. An EP can come in different ways. For example, Holly will have EP credits on most of what Antigravity Academy does because she's a development exec, but it also can come from a financier. A lot of the times that is what it is. In addition to that, it could be someone that is going to come along and champion the film. Maybe someone with a bankable name, unfortunately. Right. But that's like another part of it. Associate producer is, that one varies a lot, and so does co-producer. Those two, I feel like a lot of the times, like a line producer will get an associate producer credit. It's someone that maybe is doing a lot for the film, but they're not doing as much as like a producer would. So I think that the AP and the co-producer credit probably comes down to workload a lot of the times. For example, on Didi, Sean's mother, we shot in Sean's house. Like Sean's mom like found a lot of our locations for us. Like she was a huge help. Yeah. So we gave her an AP credit. Oh, that's awesome. So like it also can be like given to people like that.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Holly, are there some elements of projects that come to you that you find hinder movement or interesting with financing, like something that comes as a package or not a package? Do you find there's
I think there are probably a couple of different ways to approach that question, but ultimately what I would say like can end up hindering or like, stopping movement or like sticking on a project is when a filmmaker, is a little too rigid when it comes to like what needs to happen to get a project made. And that's not saying that a filmmaker shouldn't stand on what's important to them, because I think that's absolutely the case. But I think, when you're meeting with people during the process of like, meeting financiers and potential partners and cast and things like that, or for documentaries, every step of the way, there's a new hurdle. I think you have to identify like what is really important for you to like remain steadfast on, like what is the stuff that is going to be like your anchors in the project, and what are things that can be open to, collaboration or input or notes. I think oftentimes like when I see something really stalling out, it could be the market, just in general, it's really challenging, especially when it comes to documentary. Or it could be that, folks are trying to see what something could be and see if there's openness, to kind of tweaking a thing here or there. And then there might be a resistance to that then kind of, can forecast what that collaboration might look like. And that's not necessarily to say that it's like just the filmmaker that's rigid. It could be other people that are approaching it in a, really bullish way or something. But yeah, I mean, oftentimes these days, especially, it has to do with just like the ebb and flow of the market. But I think that's why, as filmmakers, writers, it's important to approach everything with like intention and a genuine lens and authenticity to oneself, so that way you're able to really stand on what it is that's important to you.
Right.
I don't know if that answers your
No,
question.
yeah, finding balance between, staying true to your vision, but also understanding that you have to get the movie made as well.
It's an inherently collaborative medium, every step of the way there are new opportunities to collaborate and new opportunities for that to kind of go left. So I think also, choosing your collaborators wisely is really, really important every step of the way, and no matter what level you are, like in the spectrum of things.
Yeah. Christina, how has the landscape of getting movies made changed in the last 5 to 10 years in your experience?
It's a great question. By the way, I feel like every time, Holly, you say something, there's a truck or a plane that goes
Yeah,
by.
I was just like...
So bad.
Or that.
Yeah. It's LA. It's a great question because I feel like every year there's a new thing that happens. To be real, like the landscape of buyers has really changed on the studio side. There's a lot of consolidations and mergers, streaming, and I do feel like there are great scripts and projects being made that are perfect for streaming, and that's an opportunity for all of us. As much as we love theatrical, there is something to be said about widespread distribution that comes on your TV. But because there are less studios that actually are buying things and they are making less things, independent financing is so important. It's more important than ever. Yeah. I think a lot of these wonderful ladies up here will know a lot of these financiers, and that's a marketplace that changes and ebbs as well. There are new financiers, there are new companies with sort of changing mandates as it relates to their investment matrix. Do they want to develop? Do they want to only do production financing? Do they want to do a mix in between? What are the variables? Is it important for them to have an international piece or a domestic piece? So, I think it's exciting. Every day's new. But what's great is that now you're not just catering to what Paramount wants, right? It can be perhaps there's some great financiers that are related to tech or specific regions of the world that have something very close to them that they also want to say, or that rely on people who have great taste like Valerie and Holly, and they've gained their trust in that way. That's now accessible to you. So
amazing. Yeah. Rayka, in your experience, when pitching, what are some of the core elements that make a project undeniable? Like, do you have any advice for people pitching that may help?
How much time do you have?
Yeah, right?
I mean, we've sort of all been swimming around this a lot during this conversation, but I think the first thing is, do you connect to it on a really genuine level, on a personal level? For me, I have to have some type of emotional connection to it because I always say, like, I think filmmaking, storytelling, the process of storytelling, it really is like very much tied to your identity, and your personal development and growth has a lot to do with the stories that you want to tell at any given time in your life. So I think that's the first thing I look for is like, is this, does this project have the sort of like the DNA that feels like me, feels like the type of things that I've always wanted to say. And then the next thing I think is like, do I have a POV? Do I have like a vision? Because it's not enough to just have like a great story in your hand. You need to have like a creative vision for like how you would want to execute this story. What's the angle that you're telling this story? Because there's a million ways to tell a story, and what is it that makes you the only person to tell this particular story in this way? And is it the most potent way? So many times I come across stories and I'm like, ADHD, I'm like squirrel, because there's just so much information at our fingertips all the time, and I'm always consuming like articles and content and reading up on things, and it's always just in like the state of being inspired. But But so often I have to run it through my own several filters and be like, okay, great, I've sat with this for a couple weeks now, and I still love the story, but I don't feel like I'm the best person to tell it. I don't feel like I've come away with like a very strong POV that as a consumer I would watch and be like, hell yeah, that's amazing. You know, they totally got to the heart of what the story is.
Yeah, that's really self-aware of you too, because I feel like a lot of people would be like, let me do it, no matter if they're, you know, maybe not the right person as well.
There's always someone out there that can, you know, not always, you know,
right.
if you can think of storytellers that are out there that can probably do it a lot better than you know,
right.
just by virtue of who they are and where they come from, their previous work, then like maybe it's not the project for you.
Right, for sure. A question for all of you, you know, I think a lot of people in our audience may be at the stage of general meetings, which, you know, are what they are. But do you guys have any tips or thoughts for writers and directors on how to stand out in them? You know, how to make an impression when execs and all these people are meeting lots of writers, directors?
I think being super prepared and intentional is really, really important. Doing your research when you're going into a room, understand who you're meeting with, what their taste is, what they've done in the past, maybe read up or watch, you know, depending on who you're meeting. Being able to connect authentically with someone based on something that they've done and is their experience, like they're always going to be a little impressed by that because frankly, there are plenty of people that don't do that. So I think it's really important to identify what it is that maybe connects you to that person, even if it's like super random, you know, and show up that way prepared. But I also like the mom advice is just like also be yourself, you know, don't try to be someone you're not. Connecting with people on a human level can be super impactful. And I think so many of the relationships that I've built in this industry have turned into like, you know, friendships because you end up really connecting with people. So I think kind of approaching these things as like human to human, but also knowing your stuff and not feeling like, you know, anybody is wasting anyone's time, I think is super important.
I can speak to this. Or no, you go ahead.
No, I was going to say that I feel like, Christina, your perspective here would be really good too.
Spot on. Like, know your audience. Anything that you can Google, you shouldn't be asking them in the room. Like, you should have already known that. And look, I do feel like some people have an expectation when they come out of a general meeting and they're like, we're not best friends, I failed. That's not true. The general meeting is your first connection. By the second, or you should then have the confidence to go up to them at a mixer and be like, hey, so good to see you. How's that project going? All of that. It's the start of something great or something useful. But definitely go in prepared. I do feel like the pitching, you'll have to feel out if it makes sense and ask your reps or whoever helped make that relationship, can I pitch? Does it make sense for me to pitch this thing? Right? What am I going here to do? Not only to get to know this person, but perhaps is to plant a seed of this is the type of filmmaker or creator I am, and this is something I'm working on. I think that's always a great use of your time. Keep it short and spicy, right? You don't have to show everything, right? It's a first date. Give a little bit of a teaser, talk a little bit about what you're working on, how you work as a creator, and stay in touch. I know I have a lot of great friends and clients that have great success with being like, hey, congratulations, you're on Variety 35 under 30. Amazing, congratulations, that's great, well-deserved. Like little things like that go a long way. That really does matter.
Oh, I was just going to say from like a director's point of view, I'd like to talk to you about this afterwards too. So often too, you're sitting in a room and on the other side, the executive that you're meeting with or the producer that you're meeting with also doesn't feel like they've watched your work or is that well read. So, and you can always tell. Yeah. So I love that advice of like being prepared because I think it's a two-way street. You know, it's really like, do you care enough about the other person that's sitting, you know, in front of you, and do you really want to work with them? Right. It just says a lot when you go in prepared, and the biggest thing I would say, just because I've you know did this a lot when I was younger, and I'm doing it now when I'm older too, is like don't puff up. Just go into the room. Don't posture. Just go into the room, be prepared, and like just be yourself. As it's like, it sounds like just cliche kind of advice, but it's like literally the most important thing that you can take away with you in this industry.
Yeah. They'll be able to tell if you're trying to show out, you know?
100%. Yeah. I was going to take this also from like the cold reach out perspective, because they all talked about it on like having a rep, and maybe like a lot of people in this room don't have a rep yet. I can't tell you how many emails I get that are just like, here's my script. And I'm like, oh, who are you? Like, how'd you get my email? You know, like, so I think that like providing some perspective of like who you are and like context, you know, and also like, I mean, I don't want to be rude, but like, what should I take time out of my day to like give this the time of day, you know? And it's like, I literally can't tell you how many times it's just like a script in my inbox, and I'm like, that's crazy. But I will also say that like, know who you're reaching out to, because, and like what their specialty is. Cause like I was saying earlier, like I am a producer that's more on the production side. So honestly, like I don't really, like now that I have Holly as a partner, like I don't really like sit and read all day long. Like she's going to vet anything first. Right. And if she's like, oh, this is great, then I'll read it, you know, and just because that's just how our relationship works. Right. So I think that like, if you're doing a cold reach out, like it's better to reach out to people who are like specifically in development.
Yeah. Know your audience.
And it's also not to say that you shouldn't do cold reach out. Like I actually think that it's important to do that, especially as you're starting out. And, you know, you never, even if it's just like, I would love to pick your brain for 10, 15 minutes, you know, I think it's always worth doing it, but with intention, like in the email explaining why you're interested with meeting with that specific person. Cause like, and also kind of knowing when to not, if they're not, you know, giving you back, like maybe just move on, you know, because I also, to Val's point, like I get a lot of emails, you know, being like, hey, my like, you know, World War II script, and, you know, I really want to meet with you on it and stuff. And I'm like, oh, okay, what about Antigravity Academy, or what about me specifically makes you think that this would be a meeting for that, you know? And it's not to say that it's not, but just tell me what that is, you know? So I think oftentimes it's really just like this email, it's like, dear blank, you know, and then whatever it is, and expecting a meeting out of it and then not letting it go.
So copy and paste.
It's so copy paste, like make it intentional, you know, and I think that it should really just like ground any outreach that you do.
And I also think that like, remember that the person that you're emailing on the other side, because I agree you should do cold reach outs. Like the reason why I've gotten most of my jobs have been cold reach outs. But like, understand that they're also a human that like could be busy, could be having a bad day. So like if they're not going to reply, like for whatever reason it might be, like give them grace as well.
Yeah, for sure. And I like what you said about intentional, just because it's like producer director, you know, relationship is so vital. Obviously it's everything. And if they're not the right person for you, like don't push it. They're just not, you know. Some of you guys have mentioned articles, and so I was curious about all of your opinions about kind of where IP is, and how to work with IP, how to find IP. Should people be searching for IP? What are your thoughts?
I think it's a matter of like, what the IP is, but also what is the IP doing for you and for your project? Like, are you looking for IP's sake? Because people are saying you need IP to get something noticed, you know, or to get a project, like, you know, some heat around it. I think it doesn't always make sense, you know, especially, you know, for a documentary project, for instance. Like, I don't know how many doc folks are here, but, you know, if there is, you know, a Wired article that has like a ton of research behind it, and the journalist has been entrenched in this issue for years, and it's a really fascinating story, that might behoove you to get that, you know, to option that IP and work with that, you know, journalist to be able to give you access to like so many different things. Or if it's a book, you know, where you're seeing it as a roadmap for your film, your take on the film, and it's really resonates with you personally, that can be amazing, and it can be super helpful. But I think if you're just sort of looking for stuff or chasing something that's hot, and it's not necessarily resonating with you as a filmmaker, it's not a story that you're like burning to tell, then it can honestly be like a little bit more trouble than it's worth a lot of the time.
I have time for one more question. I want to ask Christina a question, and then I think we have time for 2 audience questions. Make them good. Christina, I wanted to ask, so I feel like the multi-hyphenate thing maybe 5-10 years ago was maybe looked down, I don't want to say down upon, but
we love a multi-hyphenate.
Well, we do. Yeah. I feel like it's such an amazing thing now that everyone's kind of embracing being a multi-hyphenate. And so I was curious, a lot of your clients are multi-hyphenates. So how do you decide when they do so many things so well, what's the next best career move for them?
It's a great question. I think it's a little bit for, it depends on where they are at in life and what they're looking to do next. I've had some people say, just had a baby, just want to make some money. That's very practical. I want to hear that, right? And I'm like, great. These are your options, right? And I have other people that are like, I've done this 8 times already and I would like to do something else. Like, I'm curious, or I feel frustrated. I feel like I'm in a box. I'm like, great. How can we maybe work on a little bit more of this other bit of your multi-hyphenate career that could be interesting for you? I feel like there are some people who love to flex all of it, right? As writers, producers. When I think about Eva Victor, right? She wrote, directed, starred in it. The movie's great. You guys should see it. But I love that. Sometimes it's like a bit of a splash, try a little bit of everything. And then I wonder, for somebody like Eva, it's like, what do you do next? And she has a lot of options. But there's probably a path for her where I would, if I was in her life, I would say, I'm curious about writing and directing something that you're not starring in, because your time and capabilities are sometimes finite. It's hard to do a lot of things all at once. You shouldn't feel ashamed to just do one bit of your hyphenate, right? Because again, those are all labels. Those are all convenient things. You are a multitude of things. And I would encourage anybody here that feels like they have the capacity to do a lot of things to say, I empower you to then feel confident that you can just write or direct or act in something and not feel like it takes away from the other bits of who you are.
Amazing. Thank you. So yeah, I want to open up for questions. I see one right here. Yeah. We have a mic for you. Oh, fancy.
Okay. Hi, I'm Alex, writer, indie producer. I just have a question specifically because right now I kind of have a good slate of TV, film, comedies, and I've sent them out to producers and stuff like that. So we're just waiting to hear back. I have a question specifically about development, like the role of an agent, of how like it can push a project, I guess, because right now I've sent my project out. I have an agent that I'm talking to, but I'm not signed to. So I'm just wondering, like, the role of the agent in the development process, if you can kind of speak to more generally so it can help everybody.
Happy to. I mean, often it's they're a bit of a matchmaker for you, and they're probably also giving you some feedback, like more top-line feedback. It depends on the person, on your voice, what's in the marketplace, and who could be a right match for you. So, perhaps this person, I find in your circumstance, I know that's always a fun place to be like, nothing is defined yet, which I empathize, that is life. I'm so sorry. But I think sometimes I'm at a place where I'm not sure about something with a client, and I'm like, it feels a little nascent, but I can see you're so sick of it. You're there, right? And they don't have a producer that I can go to. What I'll actually do is I'll slip it to a couple producers, and if I feel really secure and I feel like it's right there, maybe a couple folks on the financing side, like a couple studio execs that I really trust, to be like, please don't let this burn the read. This is not an official submission. This is just more of there's something here. What do you think? Do you think it's ready? And then doing the same thing with producers too, and being like, hey, it's out to a small handful. I think it's almost there. What do you think? I find sometimes that helps being also in the gray. Yeah.
Yeah, I totally agree. Like on a producer's standpoint, like having an agent send a script, like that's already kind of a seal of approval. So it's like extremely helpful.
Awesome. All right, one more. I see. Yes.
Thank you. I'll direct my question to Ms. Zehtabchi, but the rest of the panel is welcome to join. As you know, as you stated, you're working on your debut feature film, and to get to that point, you had to build yourself an illustrious filmography of short films. And another example of that would be Sean Wang. Before Didi, he had to do that as well. As a beginning filmmaker such as myself, my passion is feature screenwriting, but I only have one short film under my belt. Would you, in your advice, would you recommend that to prioritize more of a filmography in short films in order for, say, to get eyes on my feature script? Or do you think, prioritizing all my efforts on the feature script, make it as best as I can, and trying to get attention to that would be a better strategy?
That's a really great question. And the answer is complicated. I think it really just depends on you. Do you feel like you're ready? I love short films, and I have taken my sweet time in my career just continuing to make short films because it's a low stakes sort of opportunity, and it really is a director's medium where you get to explore your voice in so many different ways. I have so much to say and so much to explore. And when I think about features, it's like a little cumbersome to me because I'm like, oh no, this is like going to be the next 2 to 5 years of my life. I better be really sure about it. And it takes time for that to mature, right? It takes a lot of time to sort of like put into developing that project. I don't know. For me personally, what has been very important for my development has been to continue making short films and take my time making the feature till it feels right. I love that approach, but also I have friends or know people who like made a short film and then went off and made a feature as quickly as possible because they wanted to kind of like throw themselves in and sort of rip the Band-Aid. I can tell you, Sean, who was my friend and or was my classmate at USC and is my friend, started writing Didi or some version of it literally when he was in film school. And it's been, 10 years or something since we graduated? Yeah, 2016. And now he made Didi, and what a fantastic job he did. It's like it's a dream scenario for so many filmmakers. And in that time, Sean was making documentaries, he was making other narrative shorts, but he never kind of let go of Didi or his family story, which eventually evolved into Didi. There's so many different approaches, but it's like really what feels right for you.
I really think the latter of what you just said is really important, of like not losing that goal. Because I will say that like right now we have a filmmaker that we're bringing up, and he'll be a first-time filmmaker. His feature script is incredible, but the first thing financiers are asking is, okay, where's his work? And he doesn't have a short film right now. He has nothing to show because he's currently a student. And so like that's the first thing that we're gonna have to do is like get a short film on the books for him, so that way. That's just proof. It's proof that you like at least know what you're doing when you're behind the camera, And I think that like a lot of the times like that can be daunting for filmmakers starting out. But the most important part to me to have my directors remember when they're writing and making a short film, it doesn't matter if you're shooting on Alexa. It doesn't matter if you have a gaffer with your lighting. Like what matters is the story and that you're telling it. I would implore you all to go look at like Sean's short films because he made those with a couple crew members, sometimes like just himself, and they're incredible because it shows that he knows how to tell a story. An Alexa's not going to show that you know how to tell a story, And
I think something like Didi happens when opportunity meets preparation or whatever that saying is, and really like that comes from so many, him being really ready when that opportunity, and of course development and all of that, but like when that really, the timing was right. And I think you only gain so much experience, from making short film after short film, if you have those possibilities, if you have the resources. But yeah, you can do think about the docs world. It's like, people pick up their camera and they make incredible films too. I think thinking scrappy and thinking like, what do I really need to tell this story? And like, what is at the core of it? And how do I really bring that out, without needing to have, a massive operation that can really go a long way in showing people who you are.
I was gonna say that's been the really amazing part. We get submissions for our screenings, and it's really awesome seeing how little people can work with and make great short films. And it's just always story. It's always story first. So that's great advice. Do we have time for one more? Are we good? Okay, one more. Do you still have your? Okay, cool. She has a mic. One last question.
Thank you. I'm so happy we got one more question in there. That last one was a good one to end with. I'm working on a proof of concept right now, and I am in the editing phase of everything. And you hear a lot of different advice of like the time and the length, especially with like your attention span and passing it along. So I guess this one's more of like a granular question. But when you guys are looking at short films or seeing things online, what is like, at what moment or like what timestamp are you like, I'm in to finish it? Or, okay, I think I have understanding, or is it just kind of, depends on what you're watching?
This is such a good question. Well, wait.
Hold. Hold for sound.
It's definitely personal preference. I will say that like Holly probably has more patience than I do in a lot of things. But to me, like what I was saying earlier about like how important it is for something to be entertaining, I think applies here as well. I don't think that there's like a specific number that you need to hit, but I do think that for short films specifically, for my personal taste, and I think that like a lot of people would agree, like the first minute needs to grab you. And honestly, like if the first like even 30 seconds are like, I don't know, like a guy sitting at his desk, not doing anything, that like a lot of short films open like that, and it's just like, I don't know about this one. And like, again, like that's like a personal preference thing. Cause like I have a short attention span. TikTok has killed it. But like she might go longer than 30 seconds, might like go longer than a minute. But I do think that like starting strong is very important for a short film.
That's 100% true. I think starting strong is crucial. I think, a short film is not a sizzle. I think like for a sizzle, I'm always like between 2.5 and 4 minutes, it's like great. I think with a short film, it's however long it needs to be, which is like a frustrating answer. But like, how long does it need to be to tell your story concisely? Like, take a knife to it if you need to, but I think ultimately having, moments draw out way too long in a short film in the way that you would give them the grace to do that in a feature length, it doesn't really serve the film if you're especially trying to use it as a proof of concept.
Yeah. And if like the tone is supposed to be slow, that's okay, and like don't hinder the pacing because that's so important. But yeah, it just needs to really grab you.
Every shot needs to be
there
crucial.
for a reason. Yeah.
And on that, I just wanted to plug our friend Amani Davis is here, and she's a programmer. We love Amani, but she's a programmer at American Cinematheque, and she just started an amazing film festival the last 2 years called Proof of Concept. So if any of you have made a proof of concept short, it's a really awesome way to get people to see it and way to develop your project. So yeah.
I think you should answer about length as well.
Oh. All of my short films have been 5 minutes. I make them, they're action short films, so they're very action heavy, but 5 minutes has been really, shorter has worked for me. It's gotten me great meetings. It's gotten me in really amazing rooms. And maybe it's also because they're good, but I do find that all of mine are short. And I was gonna say with Not Your Daddies, we try to, we're not a festival officially, but we program things that are under 15 minutes because I think a lot of the times with festivals, they're trying to make sure they can program as many things as possible. So if we get something that's submitted to us that's like 19, 20 minutes, we're like, all right, this better be really, really good, But that's just us. So
it's also like, I feel like if I get a short film sent to me and it's 5 minutes, I'm like, oh, I'll watch it real quick. If it's like, 20 plus, I'm like, okay, I'm like actually going to have to like make sure I don't have a meeting during this time. And I like take time for it, know? So it's like, I totally agree. Like if it's amazing, then that's fine. But you might get someone to watch it quicker.
Yeah, 20's heading into like pilot territory.
Totally.
So, yeah. Awesome. Thank you guys so much for coming. One more round of applause for these amazing panelists. Thank you guys so much.
Daddy Dailies is presented by Not Your Daddy's Films, a social impact organization dedicated to educating and empowering women and non-binary creatives in TV and film. If you like what you heard today, don't forget to subscribe and leave us a positive review. And if you want more Daddy episode insights and links to what we talked about, join us on Patreon.com/NYD Films. Daddy Dailies is produced in partnership with Robert Bailey and edited by Carly Tamarin, Vika Stubblebine, Claudia Restrepo, and Gracie Strauss. See you next time, Daddy.